reading a book for 30 minutes until I finish the chapter, and I'm reading to help me become a better speaker, to be more articulate really. I am setting a timer for 30 minutes. Oh, you still can't see it, oh my goodness. And it starts now. This is The Mountain Is You by Brianna Wiest. I realized, or no, I searched up how to pronounce her last name, and it's German and it's pronounced Wiest, even though it's spelled with a W-I-E-S-T. So first, faulty inferences are holding you back from success. That's the first part that we're gonna be reading. And there's a couple more, and I know I think this is a two-parter. So, faulty inferences are holding you back from success. That's the first. If you're familiar with body typing, you'll probably be familiar with the terms endomorph, mesomorph, and ectomorph, though everyone actually falls somewhere within the spectrum of these, meaning that everyone has varying degrees of each. The traits you default to are typically your primary body type. If you've studied these types, you'll know what endomorphic bodies are often associated with. You'll know that endomorphic bodies are often associated with increased fat retention. The assumption here is that these people have the worst metabolism, but that is false. Endomorphs actually have the best metabolisms of anyone. They are alive today because their ancestors adequately adapted to survive. Their metabolisms do precisely what they are intended to do: store fat for later use. Something similar happens with highly intelligent people who experience high levels of anxiety. You assume that because these people are smart, they would be able to use logic to disrupt illogical fears. Logical lapses or an inability to adequately reason often generate anxiety. I think I have this one. I have logical lapses. However, their brains are doing exactly what they were meant to do, which is to piece together unrelated stimuli and identify potential threats. Highly intelligent people have a psychological function others do not, which is the ability to infer. They can extract meaning and understanding from things that others simply take at face value. This is why people who have an extremely high IQ often struggle with basic things such as social skills or driving a car. Where others see the world as one-dimensional, the highly intelligent see it as a three-dimensional. They think more deeply than is often necessary. This gives them their ability to create, understand, strategize, and invent. In the same way that the endomorph's excellent metabolism can work against them, so too can a highly intelligent person's brain. This is because at times they make something called faulty inferences, which are when fallacies, biases, and incorrect assumptions are made from valid evidence. What's happening in your brain when you're very anxious is that you're taking an often innocuous stimulus and extracting some kind of meaning or prediction from it. I'm gonna circle that word, innocuous. I'm not quite sure what that means just yet, but I'm gonna go back to that later on. When you're scared, your brain is working in overdrive to identify the thing that can potentially hurt you, and then creatively come up with ways to completely avoid that experience. The smarter you are, the better you become at this. However, the more you avoid the fear, the more intense it becomes. So what's a faulty inference? A faulty inference is when you come up with a false conclusion based on valid evidence. This means that what you're seeing, experiencing, or understanding might be real, but the assumptions that you are piecing together from it are either not real or highly unlikely. One example is a hasty generalization, which is when you make a claim about an entire group of people based on one or two experiences you've had. This is the bias at the base of a lot of racism and prejudice. Another example is, this one's Latin. Post hoc ergo propter hoc. Post hoc ergo propter hoc, which is what happens when you assume that because two things happen around the same time, they must be related, even if they aren't. That's called post hoc ergo propter hoc. I'm gonna annotate that part. Okay, so Continuing on. A false dichotomy happens when you assume that there are only two possibilities that could be valid, when in reality there are far more that you simply aren't aware of. That's false dichotomy. So one is faulty inferences, when you come up with a false conclusion based on valid evidence. For example, post hoc ergo propter hoc, which is what happens when there are two things that happen at the same time but are not, but you think they are related. The other one is a false dichotomy. So there are two possibilities that could be valid, when in reality there are far more that you simply aren't aware of. An example of this is when your boss calls you to a private meeting and you assume you must either be getting a promotion or getting fired. A slippery slope, to play off that example, is another false inference in which you assume that one event will set off a series of others, even if they certainly will not. These are just some of the myriad ways your brain can, in a sense, betray you. Though it intends to keep you alert and aware, sometimes the threat becomes overinflated. Unable to decipher the difference, your body responds regardless. So how do I correct this? Correcting faulty inferences begins with first being aware that you're doing it. So awareness. In the majority of cases, once you realize that you're thinking in a false dichotomy or making a hasty generalization, you stop doing it. So once you understand what it is, you let it go. Training your brain to stop doing it automatically takes time. Think of your mind like a search engine that autofills your terms. Think of your mind as a search engine that autofills your terms. It's hard to quite imagine how to do that. It's like a Google search, but with autofill. Okay. If it's something you've input many times over the years, it's still going to come up for a while. You have to work on consistently adding new thoughts, options, and stimuli to shift what it comes up with naturally. To shift what it comes up with naturally. Okay, this is not only possible, it's inevitable. What you consistently do is what you adapt to. Your brain will start to reorient your comfort zone, and eventually it will feel as natural to think logically as it once did to think dramatically. It will feel as natural to be calm as it does now to feel anxious. It takes awareness and it takes time, but it's always possible. Now, this is the second part. Worrying is the weakest defense system. Rumination is the birthplace of creativity. They're controlled by the same part of the brain. And rumination is something a lot of psychologists talk about when it comes to like self-development. Rumination is a bad thing. Rumination. That's the neurological reason there's a stereotype about depressed creatives. Any artist will tell you that the toughest times in their lives inspired the most groundbreaking work. What they won't tell you though is that crisis is not necessary to function. Well, of course it's not. You're thinking. Crisis is the worst case scenario. And yet, how many of us place ourselves in a state of panic over fear of that least likely scenario coming true? How many of us, in an effort to shield ourselves from panic, actually create a crisis out of fear each day? We're not just masochists. We're wildly intelligent, unconsciously functioning beings. Our brains understand something. If we imagine our worst fears, we can prepare for them. If we mull them over again and again, we can feel protected in a way. If we are ready for the storm, it can't hurt us. Except it can. Worrying excessively is not a malfunction. You are not of lesser character because you can't just stop and enjoy life. Sorry, my nose is itchy the whole time. Apologies. Worrying is a subconscious defense mechanism. It's what we do when we care about something so much we are equally terrified that it could hurt us, so we prepare to fight for it. What is the exact opposite of your fear? That's what you want. That's what you want so much that you'd go to the ends of your sanity to defend it. There's nothing wrong with you for thinking this way, but there's also nothing wrong with you for being ready to move in a new direction. The reality is that worrying does not protect us in the way we think it might. We cannot beat fear to the finish line. Worrying desensitizes us to an sensitizes us to an infinity of negative possible outcomes. It shifts our mindset to expect, seek out, and create a worst-case scenario. If a crisis were to occur, we'd start panicking, because our brains and bodies had been preparing for this epic war for a long time. Had we not premeditated these fears so excessively, we wouldn't be as impacted were they to actually happen. We'd see the situation for what it is and respond accordingly. That's where the nasty cycle forms. Once we worry ourselves sick over something that is totally delusional and it doesn't happen, because of course it was never going to, we start to associate worry with safety. See, I thought this through so many times that I've avoided it, but that's not what's happening at all. Okay, that happened to me so many times, and now I'm thinking about it and I'm confused. Just telling someone to stop worrying and be present strengthens their impulse to be fearful, because you are effectively asking them to place their guards down. Making yourself feel more vulnerable when you're already at your edge is not the answer. Instead, you have to find a different way to feel safe. That's one thing I should highlight. Find a different way to feel safe. Rather than spending your time rehearsing how much you'd panic if such and such a situation were to come to fruition, imagine how a third party would handle it if they were in your shoes. Imagine getting to the other side of the issue, perhaps even treating it as an opportunity to create something you otherwise couldn't. Rather than spending your time shrinking yourself and your life out of fear of potentially confronting some kind of hardship, work on developing your self-esteem. That's one thing. Work on developing your self-esteem and know that even if you were to fail, you wouldn't be judged, exiled, or hated in the way you fear. And I am trying to develop my self-esteem for the longest time, and not gonna lie, it keeps coming back to me. The feelings of dread, the feelings of rumination and depression and things like that. So it's a learning process, and you wouldn't be able to master this unless you are aware of what you're feeling and you know how to deal with it. So yeah, find a different way to feel safe. And this statement in itself is comforting, and it's a good advice, because even if you were to fail, as it says, nothing is going to happen. The world still moves along, and yeah, so I'll leave it at that. Rather than spending your life trying to identify the next thing to worry about and then overcome, learn to move into a new pattern of thinking. So that's another thing. That's what I wanted to say. You need to learn to move into a new pattern of thinking in which you recognize that you don't need to balance out the bad with the good to live a full and fair life. Stability and wholeness, health and vitality are your birthright. You are allowed to have everything you want. You are permitted to be at peace. Worrying is so primal in the way that it fulfills a deep need within us to feel as though we've conquered, and thus are protected and saved. Yet, at the same time, our discomfort with it is a higher aspect of ourselves, informing us that it isn't necessary, and in fact, it's holding us back from the people we want and are meant to be. There's a better way to feed your emotional hunger, and it's not fighting yourself for your own inner peace. And that's the end of the chapter. I still have 16 minutes left, so we're gonna go to the next. But in summary, the first part talks about faulty inferences, and the second part talks about us not trying to worry. I mean, don't worry. Ne t'inquiète pas. That's the summary of it all. Ne t'inquiète pas is French for don't worry. Okay, so let's go to the next chapter, chapter 5. Releasing the past. That's the title. Throughout the course of our lives, we will routinely go through a process of self-reinvention. Over time, we are meant to change, and we are designed to evolve. Our bodies show us this as we eliminate and replace cells, to the point that some argue we are essentially completely made new again every 7 years. Our mental and emotional growth follow a similar process. though it tends to occur much more often. It makes sense then that some of our most profound suffering comes from resistance to this natural process. We are in pain because though we must change our lives, we are holding on to baggage and debris from the past. As we carry unresolved emotions from day to day, we gradually move our past trauma into our future lives. Releasing the past is a process and a practice, one that we have to learn. This is where we begin. Okay, first, how to start letting go. You cannot force yourself to let go no matter how much you know you want to. Right now, you are being called to release your old self, your prior afflictions, past relationships, and all of the guilt from the time you spent denying yourself what you really wanted and needed out of life. Recovering from self-sabotage always necessitates a process of letting go. However, you cannot force something out of your brain space no matter how much you don't want it to be there. You cannot simply loosen your grip, relax a little, and will yourself to stop thinking entirely about something around which your entire world used to orbit. This is how it goes. You are not going to let go the moment someone tells you to move on, the day you realize you have to admit certain defeat, the heart-dropping second it occurs to you that hope is indeed futile. You do not need to let go by simply willing yourself not to care anymore. This is something that people who have never been really hung up on something would assume. This is something that people who have never been deeply attached to something for a sense of safety and security and love and their future believe. There is nothing wrong with you because you almost get angry when people... My camera stopped, my bad. I'll continue on. So, there is nothing wrong with you because you almost get angry when people tell you to just let go so nonchalantly, as though they couldn't fathom the storms in your head and heart. How can you become so passive about something you have spent so much of your time in your life actively working to maintain and then restore? You can't and you don't. You start to let go on the day you take one step toward building a new life, and then let yourself lie in bed and stare at the ceiling and cry for as many hours as you need. You start to let go on the day you realize that you cannot continue to revolve around a missing gap in your life, and going on as you were before will simply not be an option. You start to let go at the moment you realize this is the impetus. Again, they mentioned that. Where did I see that word? I'm trying to find the I have to... One second, guys. I know I wrote that down. One second. Okay, so I did find it, and now I am gonna write it in my notebook. It's my personal dictionary. So I wrote here, impetus, the force or energy with which a body moves, and it's also like similar to or synonymous to momentum or motivation, something that makes a process or activity happen more quickly. Happen more quickly. I know I'm on the clock, but I need to make sure I understand. I've heard this I've heard that word before, and I keep forgetting what the meaning is. But as long as I keep reading it, I would be able to remember it. Okay, so yeah, I can't seem to find where I wrote it. Maybe I should put a bookmark so that I won't forget. Oh, I found it! It was on page 73. The force or energy with which the body moves. Again, so where was I? You start to let go at the moment you realize that this is the impetus, the force or energy that makes something move. This is the catalyst. This is the moment that the movies are made about and the books are written around the songs. The books are written around and songs are inspired by. This is the moment you realize that you will never find peace standing in the ruins of what you used to be. You can only move on if you start building something new. That's really good. I really like that. You can only move on if you start to build something new. You can let go when you build a new life so immersive and engaging and exciting, and you slowly over time forget about the past. When we try to force ourselves to let go of something, we grip onto it tighter and harder and more passionately than ever before. It's like if someone tells you to not think of a white elephant, that's the only thing you'll be able to think about or to be able to focus on. Our hearts work the same way as our minds in this regard. As long as we are telling ourselves that we must let go, the more deeply we feel attached. So don't tell yourself to let go. Instead, tell yourself that you can cry for as long as you need, that you can fall into pieces and be a mess and let your life collapse and crumble. Tell yourself that you can let your foundation fall through. What you will realize is that you are still standing. What you build in the wake and the aftermath of loss will be so profound, so stunning, you will realize that maybe the loss was part of the plan. Maybe it awakened a part of you that wouldn't remain dormant had you not been pushed the way you were. If you are certain that you cannot let go of what is hurting you, then don't. But take one step today and another tomorrow to rebuild a new life for yourself, piece by piece, day by day. Because sooner or later, you're going to go an hour and realize you didn't think about them or it. Then a day, then a week, and then years of swaths of your life drift, and everything you thought would break you becomes a distant memory. Something you look back at and smile. My goodness, this author, how should I describe her? Is such a romantic writer. Everything you lose becomes something you are profoundly grateful for. With time, you see that it was not the path, it was what was standing in your way. So, I have 5 minutes remaining. I would like to use the time remaining to go over the words I could not or do not understand. So yesterday we saw the word what was the word? Inundated. So inundated. Inundated means overwhelm someone with things or people to be dealt with. So it says your brain is inundated with stimuli, to be overwhelmed. Then I'm at 141 now. Okay, and then the next word was innocuous. 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 Not harmful or offensive. Okay. What's happening in your brain when you're very anxious is that you're taking an often innocuous stimulus and extracting some kind of meaning or prediction from it. Okay, so basically what they're trying to say is that if you are anxious, something in your brain, which is something innocuous, like something that is not harmful or offensive, you take that thought and you take that stimulus and you make it into a big deal. You make a meaning or a prediction from it. So that's what it's trying to say. When you're scared, your brain is working in overdrive to identify the thing that can potentially hurt you and then creatively come up with ways to completely avoid the experience. So yeah, so that's what happens when you worry too much. The false dichotomy, I wonder if that's the same meaning as what the book is telling us. False dichotomy. Okay, a false dichotomy is a logical fallacy that presents two often extreme options as the only possibilities, when in fact more alternatives exist. Oh, so that was the AI overview, and the word just literally just rephrased what that means on here. Okay. And that's about it. I think I was able to get most. Oh, there's another one. There's the last one. Swaths. I don't know what swaths meant. I try my best to encircle as I read, so that at the end I would be able to look up what it means and then reflect on the statement to give my own understanding of it. So a swath is a broad strip or area of something, a row or line of grass, grain, or other crop as it lies when mowed or reap. A broad strip or area. Broad strip or area. A row or line of grass. As it lies when mown. As it lies when mown or reaped. So yeah, okay. So I'm gonna stop there. The next video is gonna be the psychological trick to release old experiences. I'm almost done. There's like 3 more, well, 2 more chapters to go since we're already in the 5th. So far, I like the book. I kind of enjoy the fact that it tells us not just what it is, but also gives us examples of how to overcome things like this. Self-sabotage is something that everybody experiences every time, and me particularly, I suffer from this self-sabotage thing since I don't have a lot of self-esteem and I don't have a lot of confidence. But because I'm moving into my career, or I'm trying to develop myself more, reading the book is more of like my field notes into my intrapersonal skills. And yeah, that's about it. So that's about 30 minutes. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video. Bye.